Hitler never comes to power.
Because he may have, in an Austro-Hungarian Empire that never went to war, he may have never become a disgruntled Austrian. So it's a cascade effect. It goes in all directions. How one bullet might sway a great thing, almost like the butterfly effect, you know?
Yeah,
like one side to the other. It's really amazing to consider.
And I just want to state this for the record because, many might wonder why we do Spiritus Holographica in the first place. They might say, why burden yourself with thinking of alternate realities and everything else? But this is what I say. These realities may shape an alternate reality in another world. And let's just say something happens, and possibly you slip into this reality in a dream state. Let's just say it could. You might be prepared for it.
First of all, I mean, reductionists are always going to de-emphasize speculation. Minimalists are who they are. Contemplating history is never a sour thing. It's necessary to remember, who has done us right and who has done us wrong. As far as all that stuff about dreaming, that I don't know anything about. What I do know is you can dream awake of a better world and a better chance, and a different opportunity that would have allied itself if only we weren't so violent and self-destructive.
Yes, I agree.
This is Spiritus Holographica on the Joseph Vivaldi Network. I'm Ricky Bearhart, an emissary for the Open Us Network, a parallel brand to the Joseph Vivaldi brand. The Open Us Network, audiobooks, poetry, spoken word, paranormal investigations, and talk. A creative baptism for every day. Check out the podcasts on Spreaker.com and look for the writings of Richard Olkus on Amazon Kindle.
I am Wolfman, and I'm going to plug one book that's a Kindle book by Joseph Vivaldi, and it is The Apparitions of a Warrior. It is a book of poetry by Joseph Vivaldi. It's many prose and words that have a lot of meaning, and some of the poetry can be found on Slow-Mo Joe's Poetry Show. Check it out.
So, back to the Holographica. We're going in to look into the alternate universe where certain tactical bullets don't fly and a political dynasty is not snuffed so terribly out of being. Imagine in a parallel alternate Earth if not only there was a Kennedy Space Center on Earth, but there was one on the moon during the alternate President Ted Kennedy's second term. He commissions there to be a small terminal on the actual lunar surface. And in subsequent decades, this is furnished with a space elevator so that docking is made easier and resources can be commuted from the lunar surface up into its orbit with greater ease. Then, by 1998, in this alternate hologram, there is a Kennedy Space Center on the surface of Mars, as well as a city thereon. In orbit of Earth, there would be a Dyson sphere with a large solar array collecting all sorts of resources like solar radiation to power a great many solar platforms that lie in Earth's orbit, with a space elevator under construction from the surface of Earth all the way up into orbit to do the same thing for the Earth that it does on the Moon. Be able to transport large freight loads up into orbit using the Earth's gravity without any propulsion at all. So you have all these phenomena building up, and then by our modern time, going from 2008 to 2015, in this alternate hologram, they set up a multinational corporation for the purposes of mining the Kuiper Belt for its many resources. And we have a legitimate, stellar, spacefaring civilization.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
And it begs something that I was discussing a little bit before and asked you, and I'll ask you again. If you were trying to do that, wouldn't there be other aliens from other neighborhoods possibly that could prevent that, and wouldn't that provoke war somewhat?
Well, that's an interesting topic, Wolfman, and it really depends on who you ask. There's a lot of people that think there are aliens out there. On this particular episode of Spiritus Holographica, I personally am confining the criteria to the subject of assassinations and alternate histories. But what you're talking about represents a whole other scale of contemplation.
How about this? For the sake of the argument, there wasn't any of it.
The only reason I would say we should do that for another show is because it requires a further amplification.
Let's save it for other shows.
Those are, however, lots of different possibilities within the hologram. Many edits, many audits. Anything is possible within what is unknown. All we're going by is known history and its alternate parallel.
Yes. Which brings to another topic. And with the death or the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand, since there was no World War I, no World War II, no prominence of power of Hitler, which could have shaped the whole landscape of the world.
In that Austria never became destabilized at the fall of the Austro-Hungarian Empire or its marginalization, there never would have been disgruntled Austrians, at least not more than there already were. I'm sure there were a lot of people who were crying for revolution, since that fire was all over Europe.
I get it. I got a question to ask.
Yes.
And you know how we're focusing on the landscape of Europe at the time?
To a point, sure.
Since there was no World War I, how does that shape America? Because, see, we didn't go to World War I, which means FDR wouldn't have come to prominence as he did.
It changes things drastically because it de-emphasizes our superpower status. We may never have achieved the superpower status because a stable Austro-Hungarian Empire would mean a more stable French country and a stable Europe all around. And with all the great minds as they were, if they were somehow turned to rocketry, I mean, instead of war, if they were interested in going into space, if that was the pivot of the space race, as was mentioned before the break, You
Yeah.
have all those great scientific minds that were bent to rocketry, with America de-emphasized, without even a strong navy, no reason to have a powerful industry the way we did in this parallel hologram.
And need I say, at the time of Germany, they had Air Force that was very good at it.
Well, the point is there were airplanes and all kinds of stuff sprouting up all over the place. And since the Renaissance, things had been heating up. With the Gutenberg press and then the advent of modern science thereafter, when you have all this money and talent and intellect surging around, improving engineering, exploring various options, the singularity becomes very bright consideration on the horizon.
Just wonder, what's the state of America? Where would we be technologically sound? Like, where would we be? How would we catch up to everything? I mean, if it's 1995 and the advent of the internet is coming around, where would we be in all of that? Would someone else take the reins?
Well, in your parallel with your bullet, perhaps Europe, some sort of proto-United Nations of that time, when they consolidate their resources harmoniously as opposed to at war with each other and getting in a century of debt for nothing more than a pang of hysteria. All right, if they had instead united and became a United States of Europe, and they had used their resources not only to elevate their own society, but to take them into space. I mean, you're talking about, like I said, there could have been the Hindenburg Space Center on Earth, and then the Hindenburg Space Center on the Moon. And that could be the parallel to a coalition, like a multinational effort to mine the Kuiper Belt in that future. But it may not have had to do with the United States. I think we would have been a power in the world, but World War II gave us a massive amount of strength.
Yeah.
I mean, what happened with our military-industrial complex has implications that are obviously all over our own timeline.
Yeah, that's true.
Because we have a military superpower, and most of the world regards us in that sense. Because our army bases smother every country in the world. Our Navy is a notorious presence, and obviously, our influence is felt from basically on every ocean in the world. Our influence is felt. So imagine if that influence had been redirected up, instead of worried about nationalism and borders. Now, look, I mean, this is a show about parallel continuums. We're not talking about, well, it would have been better, it would have been worse.
Yeah, I agree.
We are offering conjecture, possibilities, without judgment.
Yeah.
Because at the ultimate end of things, Spiritus Holographica shows us the chess game of how a single event can rewrite the hologram and change the game as it was played. And it's just a historical edit as opposed to a lesson or some sort of preaching. Because these are heavy topics. When you talk about assassination and you talk about debt slavery.
Yeah, in one assassination, it changes the whole landscape.
It can, anyway.
In the other end, we might have not gone to Mars earlier, or might have not had a station on the moon, or possibly the Kuiper Belt.
or we could have completely had all of